Dante attacked first, he's gonna die.
Ah, death battle. Every teenager's first experience arguing with people on the internet. And what an experience it is, spanning across more than a decade's worth of whatever possible combination of vaguely correlative matchups you can imagine. Often with some genuinely awesome animation to boot, which you gander at through tear-swollen eyes as you're watching your favorite childhood character be torn a new one by some dude who, according to the lore in an obscure Japan-exclusive audio drama, once held a fart carrying 9 billion exatons of TNT and now outscales God. Which brings us to the latest episode, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, and Clive Rossfield from Final Fantasy XVI. Both protagonists of their own high-octane action games. But who shall prevail in this battle of big-breasted men? Well, by the time this video releases, this question will have already been answered. And who wins actually doesn't necessarily factor into the topic I want to discuss today anyway. Looking back, I regret making this statement. However, since I thought it would be fun, and being a humble gamer who has yet to actually play FF16 himself, I embarked on a short side quest to gather the opinions of some experts in the field and prepare myself for the eventual outcome.
Clive, no beat Dante.
Clearly, all of them took it very seriously.
Shoot! Dante from DMC2. He shoot Clive. Clive die.
Yeah, I don't know anything about either game. I just know about that plastic chair. It's pretty funny. So whoever is from that game, I think he's gonna win. I don't know. I think his name's Clive. That's the one. I don't know. I think I'm going for that guy, the one with the white hair.
How do you think the matchup would go? Specifically, being someone who has actually met Clive in real life, you should know your stuff.
So as much as I loved Clive as a character, I still feel like Dante would pull out on top. I just think he's too overpowered. Clive, even like in his own game, really struggled to beat even the tougher icons, and he did have help in some cases as well. Like the biggest thing is going to be, can Dante defeat Ifrit? And I just think that that's totally possible. I think the last death battle that they did was before DMC5 came out, so there's more that they have to pull from. The tools that he's been given, like Dante's just only gotten stronger. So I think that he's the one that's going to come out on top.
Do you think Ben Starr is gonna hate you now?
I certainly hope not, but he also seemed like a big Capcom fan, so I think he would understand.
You are currently being recorded. Everything you say will be used against you.
I think, honestly, Dante. I mean, the only thing that I see that's, like, why they would be matched together is because, you know, characters in the Final Fantasy universe can take on, like, big monsters. But aside from that, I think Dante is just, like, he's too strong. Dante is probably one of the most busted characters in all of fiction, man. Maybe it's just me, but I always found death battles to be hard to judge.
Yeah.
Especially because if it's like a movie or something, where there's like only a few movies, then it's easy to go off by. But when you get to like comic book characters and video game characters, oh my god.
Like when there's a lot of source material, the powers become like inconsistent to themselves.
Team Dante all the way.
Team Dante all the way.
And if I get it wrong, then just edit afterwards me saying, wow, I'm going with my boy Clive, and that way I win no matter what.
Yeah. Dante versus Clive. Who do you think will take the win?
I know Clive is kind of broken, especially towards the end of the game. He basically like does the, well, this is your final fantasy, and like kills God.
Typical JRPG.
But I know a lot more about Dante's feats and everything like that, and you know, he beat Nightmare, who was like able to destroy all of hell, and like Mundus was scared of him, and then he beat Argosax in DMC2, which was like, he was only slightly weaker than Mundus, and Dante did it with ease and all that stuff. So I don't know, Dante's only gotten stronger since those games, and I don't know, it's kind of up in the air. If Clive wins, I could be like, I don't agree, but I kind of can see it. But
you're approaching that from like a lore perspective, I suppose. Like Dante's lore feats are stronger.
Yeah. If you read about Beowulf, like when Dante and Virgil fought them, Beowulf was said to have like infinite energy and all this other stuff. He was like infinitely strong, and Dante and Virgil still kind of beat them with ease. That was probably when they were at their weakest. And I just love DMC3, man. You know what? Let's just talk about DMC3. Fuck the death battle.
And in comes my next victim.
I have a feeling that the world is against me right now, so it's probably going to be Clive. Dante should win. And the main reason is that Dante is the unmatched power of the sun. Dante regenerates from pretty much anything, and everything that Clive has, Dante has used before and probably knows how to fight against. Like, Dante canonically has beaten literally every fucking demon that's ever existed, so much so that the only thing that gives him a challenge is his own blood. I don't think Clive should have a chance. Dante's demon powers are so fucked up strong that Dante can say random bullshit go most of the time. The first time we met that motherfucker, he got a motorcycle thrown at him and he decided that no, this motorcycle will stop all of its momentum right now and gravity will not exist. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Dante doesn't really have, like, a limit when it comes to his powers. Like, he, for most of his life, he used his guns, and then someday he was like, I gotta beat Virgil somehow, and decided, yeah, summon swords. Like, he, literally, everything that Virgil does, Dante can do, he just chooses not to do it. I don't know, man. Like, I feel like if Clive wins, it's gonna be bullshit. Like, no, I don't give a shit that it's sad. Has Dante ever died?
In 2013 for a little bit.
Yeah, true.
Yo.
Since you played FF16 quite a bit,
Yes.
today's enigma is, who do you think is gonna win, Dante or Clive?
And obviously a lot of discussing Clive and his powers of why, you know, he might have an advantage or disadvantage is going to come down to spoilers. I would say that I think Clive would win because by the end of the game, he has the power of literally basically all of creation, and he literally writes out magic from existence. So, like, royal guard, demon magic, whatever you want to, you know, argue for Dante, technically Clive could just use his trump card of saying, well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Clive overall, you'd say, would take the win,
I would
right?
say Clive overall, but I do think that there are some aspects that you could argue for Dante, for sure. You'll have to let me know the result because I don't watch anything like that ever.
That's fair.
Because I would just be yelling at my screen. Because obviously it all comes down to like interpretation and your own personal ideas. And
sometimes it's a bit of a popularity contest.
Yeah.
I think there Dante definitely takes the cake.
I would agree.
But we'll see.
Maybe the majority vote going to Dante shouldn't be such a surprise when I call up a bunch of primarily DMC YouTubers, but at least we got a couple takes now, and expectations are set. The reason I'm making this video, however, is because when I was a boy, I too was once left scarred by a death battle not going the way I wanted it to. The one I'm talking about is Batman vs. Spider-Man, and as you may remember, Spidey did in fact win that fight. But the actual contents of the animation had him getting his ass beat non-stop pretty much start to finish, meaning that despite him landing the eventual kill shot, it's not the most exciting watch if you're coming to see your favorite putting on a good show. So while I'm interested in hearing out whatever research on the games and lore they bring forth to argue whether Dante or Clive is gonna win, the simple aspect I want to focus on is how well they did Dante justice within the animation, as in taking into account his insane breadth of options for every possible situation, and making creative use of his tools and abilities in a way that feels true to his gameplay style. Especially after the often underwhelming action in Netflix DMC, featuring very basic sword battles that anyone could have, I'm fiending to see a high-budget portrayal of Dante absolutely going ham. And let's be honest, we're probably not going to be seeing much of that until the next game releases. So at last, it's time for a death battle!
Oh, using Netflix footage. Alright, that was the... Is that the fucking POC dodge? Charge shots, no one uses that shit. Already impaled ones. What was that? Interesting cut. But this is really cool. I'm not sure what the fireworks was doing just now, but Dante on his... Ah, so they are just fucking using all the styles he has. That's really cool, actually. Yeah, that pose is sick. Oh, nice. MVC3 super. Bitrate hell. This looks sick. Ooh, jeez. That regeneration animation is sick. Was that 2 DSDs? Judgment, I assume. What the fuck is even happening? It's more exciting watching them go at it normally. Dante attacked first, he's gonna die. Huh. That wasn't a doppelganger. Huh?
Huh. You know, I wrote all of this script so far under the assumption that Dante would take the win. Now that he didn't, I'm actually gonna have to chime in and do what I wanted to avoid, that being arguing against the outcome. Not necessarily because I think it was impossible for Clive to win, but because some of the metrics they used to determine it were incredibly stupid. Hopefully bouncing back and forth between making fun of power scaling as a concept and bringing up genuine gripes with the conclusions they draw won't come off as too jarring and hypocritical.
I fail to see the logic here.
Also, random, but I feel like I've seen this exact beginning shot before in either DMC or Metal Gear Rising somewhere, but I can't seem to find the proper cutscenes right now if that actually was a reference. So first off, I will say that I appreciate how quick and painless the introduction went. A lot of death battles can feel strange with how they handle two characters meeting and then finding some excuse to have them fucking murdering each other. Just having Dante say he's taking care of trouble like it's a demon hunting job works well enough. Sparking the fight are 2 quick gunshots with Ebony and Ivory. You guys already know how I feel about that animation, but their inclusion into a fight like this is almost mandatory. As Clive retaliates, he actually knocks Ivory out of Dante's hand, which feels a little sudden. Dante is usually only shown to be disarmed when he's genuinely put on the back foot, so I'm kinda iffy about literally Clive's first attack already doing so. The God Hand back dodge that follows, I'm not too sure about either. The slow-mo makes it feel kinda similar to the perfect dodge in Pinnacle of Cash Grab, and I guess there is a precedent for Dante doing full backhand plants in DMC2, but something about it looked out of character. A more casual evade like Flint Wheel would have probably been cooler. But hey, this is coming from someone who thinks when you sight roll with Dante or Virgil, you need to have your controller taken away. So maybe my opinion on the subject is a little extreme. What I really like is that after only holding Ebony, they have Dante whip out DSD, with the weapon switch noise, and dual wielding for a little bit. He doesn't exactly use them in unison, but by having the one arm down, casually holding his sword, while slowly walking towards Clive, firing charge shots from his gun, it does manage to actually look pretty badass. If Ebony Shot had him moving with this kind of posture and confidence in DMC5, I probably would actually use it every once in a while. Still would rather have my gunslinger suggestions though. On the topic of mixing melee and ranged, as far as I know, FF16 has an interesting mechanic where you can chain fireballs after sword swings in a Bayonetta gun kata style way. A bit of a shame Clive never used that. Anyway, having Dante trick around to avoid the energy waves and try get the drop on Clive was pretty rad, and not too dissimilar to when he suddenly teleports above and Helmbreakers you in his DMC5 boss fight. After our first impalement, they did something pretty interesting. The Faust dance is the most iconic part about the weapon in the public consciousness, with its actual moveset only having these kinds of dance-like flourishes during Hat Trick and Red Hot Night. So they took the final pose of the scene and turned it into an actual physical attack. Not quite a royal release, but the single finger clashing with Clive's strike and causing a devastating hit feels kind of like it's done in a similar vein. Whipping out Nevin was nice to see, but with it being the sole non-DMC5 Devil Arm, its inclusion raises some questions about why certain other weapons and abilities didn't come into play that could have gotten Dante the upper hand. I'm gonna talk more about that later though. Also, this cut feels incredibly jarring. Till this point, the fight had been beautifully seamless, and generally it continues to be. Yet here they show Clive surfing around to avoid the lightning bats, the camera direction clearly insinuating a counterattack, only to flash to white and have a different sequence which feels completely unrelated. If you're wondering what gives me the right to criticize this animation, I point you towards my award-winning dogshit stick figure doodles. Thank you very much. Awkward cut aside, I love the way this scene plays out. A rapid exchange of clashes, with Dante rattling down a plethora of King Cerberus moves, from pole play to Kingslayer to my goat hot stuff and long revolver, elegantly interspersed by swings of the nunchucks. And showing him not even paying Clive any mind, just having fun moonwalking as he's summoning a lightning storm, is pretty charming. The fireworks here feel super out of place though, and gives off the impression that it was thrown in just for the sake of being able to claim that none of the DMC5 arsenal was forgotten about. If the idea was to have fireworks ward off the lightning strikes, similar to some Faustspike shit, then that really wasn't conveyed well. And it would make the fact they completely forgot about Dante's conjured swords even weirder, considering he literally used those to do the same with Griffin's attack. But more on that later. I didn't have high hopes when Kalina was equipped, being a big hater of Dante's slow moves and not thinking they particularly suit his combat pace. So I thought it was a great idea to combine that with the surprise return of Doppelganger, having him keep Clive occupied with Balrog while preparing to unleash Mega Cascade. Reminds me of some of the stuff I want to propose for Virgil, as prophesized a few weeks ago in that Mega ADHD Yamato and Cavalier video. Anyway, we got the kickstands, and I feel like I even saw something akin to welter dodges in there. Fighting with Balrog would probably look a lot more appealing, by the way, if the basic attack mash was in fact a left-right jab like this, instead of always the same fist. They stayed even more lore accurate to Mega Cascade by making it so that Dante got his dumbass hit during the recovery. Shouldn't have used that move without the quad S cancel. The sequence with Cavalier is short but sick, throwing in what feels like a taunt as he descends the big purple rock thing. It definitely seems like Dante is having a lot of fun in this fight, which is pretty important to me. He devil triggers at this point, but again, notice that there's no sign of swords formation anywhere in the exchanges that follow. This cut ends up feeling rather strange as well, their big clash instantly transitioning into the DMC3 raindrop reference, which makes it look as if they had already been trading blows for a while. But the speedy exchange that follows is pretty hype, even with me having no clue what that bar in the top left means. Probably some FF16 QTE thing. It's neat seeing a cinematic of Dante fighting in his DT form. The little there was of that in 5 always had the wings up, when the devil trigger looks a lot cooler with them folded into a coat. Clive does his Timu Judgment Cut end, and we get a little bit of Royal Guard for the next couple seconds. Note that, after Quicksilver is cancelled out however, Dante does actually get hit in the back. After taunting people with the fact that Marvel vs. Capcom 4 is never gonna happen by showing Devil Must Die with the modern DT design, the battle goes to space, and super forms are called upon. Here things become a lot harder to really assess, since Sin DT's moveset is of course a lot less extensive, and loose aside, they didn't exactly adapt any particular abilities. I think this awkwardly slow wave of fire is supposed to be the final hit of Judgment, but I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't help that Ifrit's design is an absolute particle mess of bitrate hell, and so their clash turns into borderline incomprehensible visual noise. I want to say that it's very weird having Dante being able to just spawn a second Devil Sword Dante in his other hand, but you can hardly even tell what he does with it, so I guess it's not a big deal. Just a strange idea to pull out of a sudden, with no substantiation made during the part where they list the character's abilities. The collision of their super moves also plays out in a very disorienting way. I'm still not sure what happened, nor how it resulted in both Dante and Clive being blown in the exact same direction back down to Earth. After seeing them there, back in their human forms, I was hoping for a bit more DMC gameplay inspired goodness, since the overall super mode fight left me more confused than anything. And then Dante limply throws DSD, gets impaled by Clive's sword and dies. Yeah, the ending to this fight felt a little sudden, but once you saw Dante attack Clive as he was weakly and helplessly trying to stand up, it was pretty clear Dante was gonna die. I know how these things work. So, let's talk about it. In the intro I wrote before this death battle came out, I said I wouldn't care if Dante lost, right? And honestly, that still holds kinda true. From everything I've seen of FF16 with its crazy set-piece moments where you kill God in space, I'm completely willing to believe them when they show it as evidence that Dante in the games just has no feats that come anywhere near matching that. Devil May Cry is very pure action gameplay through and through. It's also why I wouldn't have minded Bayonetta beating him, considering her insane QTE feats. One thing you frequently hear people bring up is Royal Guard. I guess even I did, and that thumbnail art I totally didn't spend 35 hours on. The thing with that is, though, that power scaling gameplay mechanics of this nature is just an incredibly questionable endeavor. I think stuff like Dante being able to teleport around should definitely factor in, even though he himself likes to constantly forget about it in the cutscenes. And in the same vein, I want to see Royal Guard adapted somehow, but making it this end-all be-all that renders him an untouchable god would be very strange. Several games have block buttons, you know? Let's take a look at LEGO Obi-Wan for example. In world-renowned baby game LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, you are able to hold down the attack button and functionally render yourself impossible to kill. Going by gameplay logic, this should actually make LEGO Obi-Wan even more powerful than Dante and Clive, since they both have incredibly tight timing as a prerequisite for their version of perfect parries. Meanwhile, he doesn't even have to try. Same goes for every other game with more lenient defensive capabilities. Being so obsessed with random gameplay feats is how you get Link being able to move at the speed of light or some shit.
No, that's fucking stupid.
And indeed, look at this clip, where they have Nero using Pedal Ray right into Judgment Cut End.
Wait, why are they listing Devil Breaker abilities? What the fuck is that? Such a specific scenario to like play out in gameplay and then power scale. That's really stupid.
Because Pedal Ray shoots lasers, which bounce around, that clearly means all the projectiles are traveling at the speed of light. Therefore, we can calculate that Virgil during JCE is moving around 11 times faster than light. They do realize that by that logic, gunshots in this series travel like 50 times the speed of light as well, right? Didn't seem to help the soldiers in Mission 1 much when they were firing their rifles into the crowd of Impusas. Meaning the basic bitch Impusa can withstand barrages of FTL attacks without a scratch. But then Nico runs one over with her van and it dies? Nico's van stronger than Judgment Cut End confirmed. Well, I guess we already knew that. Anyway, to bring this weird tangent to a close, a lot of this interpretation to gameplay feats, along with the fact that different fictional worlds' logic and rules often do not seamlessly mix, just makes power scaling kinda pointless a lot of the time. So I figured they'd do the usual thing and bring up how some book says that Nightmare has infinite power and can destroy the ever-spanning hell, and so because Dante punched him real hard, that means he is universal god tier 9th dimensional multiverse breaking level. But the thing that greatly bothered me was how they were weirdly cherry-picky about what feats they pull from the lore and what they decipher according to gameplay mechanics. The most obvious flaw is that in order to measure how long Dante and Clive can stay in their super forms, they took the Devil Trigger mechanic, which is a temporary buff to empower and grant you extra abilities during gameplay, and compared that to dedicated set-piece sections where you're literally made to play as Ifrit until you beat it. And then their idea of throwing Dante a bone is to take Netflix Dante, who isn't canon, look at his first ever Devil Trigger transformation, and then literally drag the cursor across their timeline of the episode to say that the limit is 6 minutes. First of all, clearly you've never heard of a super costume. Then, you neglected the fact that
Itsuno explicitly stated Dante's Devil Trigger is his natural form, and he could stay in it forever if he chose to.
And Devil May Cry actually does have a super mode set piece as well, in Mundus Phase 1, where you're permanently devil triggered until you beat him. I didn't even really want to talk about this, because I always think people pulling up Kamiya's greatest sin to prove that Dante can go toe-to-toe with a being capable of creating his own pocket dimension, and therefore he is universe-breaking tier as, really stupid. It's literally just because they needed an infinitely panning background for you to fly towards. But if they're gonna use these kinds of arbitrary in-game measurements, ignoring their mechanical context, then the Sparta DT flying section should absolutely be taken into consideration.
That's what I would say.
But did you consider that Death Battle takes into account like the highest possible feats, I believe, of every character? So
Yeah.
they should probably take into consideration that Dante is able in DMC5 to carry 4,294,967,295 gold orbs at a time. So
Oh my goodness.
I wrote that
didn't
down
think of that.
earlier.
Hold on. No, that's a good point though. Wait a second. If Dante could basically infinitely revive with gold orbs to stay in the fight, and also
plus there's
Dante
Mom's
beats...
credit card for the PlayStation Store to revive
Yeah,
afterwards.
exactly. Less Mimi side is I do think that Dante beats Clive when it comes to endurance, right? Because Clive gets tired quite quickly, especially if he like transforms into Ifrit. There are moments in the story where he straight up he like gasses out basically. Whereas Dante in 5 canonically his battle with Urizen like from the prologue lasted 24 hours.
Oh really? I didn't know that. That's
yes.
cool.
And at that point, Urizen was stronger than Dante. Like, Dante didn't even manage to get a single hit in on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he was still able to go toe-to-toe with a dude that was stronger than him for an entire day.
While I think attributing the strength of his healing factor to his current devil energy, as they're showing a clip of Dante getting run through by 4 scythes before ever awakening his devil trigger, immediately turns it into a bit of a faulty argument, I won't pretend like Dante is never gonna run out of juice. The month-long coma obviously goes to show that there's a limit to the punishment he can take. But especially right after having Lucid Enigma tell me about how Dante has the upper hand in endurance, it was weird seeing them cherry-picking something so specific in order to grant Clive the win. Especially when... Doesn't FF16 have fucking cooldowns on all of your special abilities? If we're being annoying about in-game meters, this seems like kind of an important thing to maybe bring up, considering for all of Dante's moves, no such limitation exists. This includes Ice Age, which is an impenetrable shield, Dreadnought, which makes him temporarily invincible and can actually be activated instantly judging by his DMC4 boss fight, and more niche gameplay tech like how, you know, Dante can literally just spam welter dodge left and right to achieve permanent immortality until he stops. In all honesty though, there were a few things I want to bring up, because with how thorough Death Battle's research was, they almost felt like they must have been deliberate exclusions from the video. First of all, Powerscaling is dumb because different worlds play by different rules, but the fact that Dante literally acquires Ifrit and endures its fires of hell in DMC1 makes it feel weird for them to not bring up the shared power even once,
Dante sees Ifrit, what's up my boy, dap up,
and eventually have him die to its flames. Dante should have just won by courting Ifrit back over to his side after impressing the icon with a shitty little platforming sequence. Then, I pointed this out earlier, but DSD Conjured Swords are literally nowhere to be seen, despite that being Devil Sword Dante's big new thing. They do a lot for Dante in every aspect of his play, both offensive and defensive. The Mission 18 cutscene shows Dante being able to use them to negate lightning, and within Interceptor and Escort, the Conjured Swords are both capable of autonomously destroying projectiles coming his way, attacking foes, and, even when he's not prepared to defend against an attack, they will literally block for him. So Clive surprising him and getting 2 hits off on his back as he's devil triggered is something this mechanic just straight up wouldn't really allow for. Same as how it is bizarre seeing Dante throwing his sword in the limpest round trip ever when DSD usurped that move with round trips instead, which chase after and shred into the enemy with perfect accuracy, without him even needing to let go of his weapon. As Nevin, Doppel, and Quicksilver came out, The implication is that the full breadth of Dante's arsenal would be available to him, and while there's a bunch of powerful moves that come to mind, there's obviously the big one.
I wonder if Yamato goes in consideration again, because I think in the Bayonetta thing, that was like the trump card.
There's a very real possibility that they'll use that again. I wouldn't be surprised if Yamato made an appearance at some point.
After it was made out to be the determining factor in Dante slicing Bayonetta and Madama Butterfly apart, just not having him make use of Big Bro's reality-cutting sword feels wrong. I get them not wanting to repeat themselves and creating new exciting scenarios, but also...
Yeah, that is cool, but that's not the point of the video.
It is
That,
to
like,
me. I
every
want to
time-
see a cool fight scene.
This is a death battle. They should probably use everything they have at their disposal in order to claim the win. Which brings me to the last suspicious exclusion. Sin Devil Trigger does not have a lot of moves. You would be hard pressed to miss any particular one. So the fact that Demolition isn't mentioned at any point feels deliberate. For those who don't remember, Demolition has Dante summoning a black hole, rendering the enemy defenseless and trapped in frozen time before the black hole crushes them to literal mush. It's not an attack that deals a set amount of damage, but instead it will specifically instant kill the opponent. There is an exception, and that is boss fights, which Dante can encounter in the game. For gameplay purposes, they were of course granted instant kill protection, but an important thing to note here is that the protection had to be added manually. Boss fights which Dante normally wouldn't come across, like Gilgamesh, Nidhogg, and Geryon, continue to be wiped from existence in an instant. So as gameplay logic goes, you see where I'm going with this. I don't really know what Clive would have to do to possibly counter this, and the fact that it's never brought up makes me think Death Battle felt the same way. With all that said, at the end of the day, these kinds of fights do just end up boiling down to an individual's fan interpretation of the convoluted and often contradictory feats they have ahead of them. No one's really gonna be able to claim they definitively know who wins, besides those actively making the games. But on second thought, what do the devs know anyway? So, I definitely got pretty caught up in a heated power scaling discussion I meant to avoid. But after all this whining, what did I actually think of the fight scene? Despite thinking certain things would play out a different way, an unfortunate complete lack of aerial raves from either side, and some move choice and continuity weirdness during the particular moments I pointed out earlier, this was honestly a really fun watch. I wasn't exactly flabbergasted and blown away, but I could definitely see myself returning to this for some of the Dante moments. Despite meeting his eventual end, the animation not only favored Dante for the majority of its screen time wise, but he was also allowed to turn a variety of Clive's wins into opportunities for himself to show off even more. It's hard to argue that he wasn't portrayed as the star of the show, just like how Batman was before he exploded into chunks. And the dialogue between the two characters was simple but felt pretty on point. No line ever stood out to make me raise an eyebrow like Netflix did, so I think the Death Battle did Dante justice. Even if he wasn't quite the high-flying style beasting version of himself you'd see in a Beak combo video. For anyone mad about Dante's supposed demise, he says, "Not bad," which is actually a voice line that will trigger after you input Flipper instead of when you die. Meaning he secretly recovered from Ifrit's fire and went off to live on a farm somewhere, happily ever after. And talking about happy endings, it's time for me to thank the people I hit up to imbue their wisdom onto me. At the time of writing this, I'm not entirely sure yet how much they will be dispersed throughout the video, but I appreciate every single one a ton. Antonio Redgrave does a variety of DMC and superhero content, and recently uploaded the first of a Ninja Gaiden review series. Splinter3303 has a selection of disgustingly long analytical video essays, with videos on NG4 and a Bakugan PS2 game coming up soon. If you're not yet subscribed to my brother Beak, then you should totally type his name into the YouTube search bar and see what happens.
What? What? Whoa!
Lucid Enigma is the absolute go-to for ridiculous challenge runs and impossibly niche DMC gameplay trivia. And Rafficator is actually about to finally upload his big DMC5 video, which he has been working on for months. I already got to see quite a couple of clips, and the passion really shows. Definitely be there when the video releases this Saturday. As for me, it's probably gonna be that Spider-Man video next. Like I said, Ifrit is an absolute mess of visual noise, so I don't think I really got anywhere near accurately capturing it in this art. If I do the Spidey idea right though, the thumbnail might just end up being one of the coolest things I'll ever draw. Sharp system analysis after that, totally. Like and subscribe. I don't know how to link my Patreon and OnlyFans.
Did you getify your mic?
Yeah, I did. We gotta add the ghetto quality to it.